welcome back to part 2 of our Ministry Life podcast. We're still here with our friends Jeremy and Matt from our neighbor church, Village Hope. We just finished last week's episode. If you haven't watched it, just talking some personal life, some ministry. Really just trying to encourage you to get your nose in the book and do some ministry on your own.
Yeah.
And we ended, it's kind of funny, we ended the last episode talking about how God can use people in spite of yourselves, in spite of your struggles, in spite of all of the things you're going through. So if you haven't heard that, check out last week's episode. But just to dive in deeper today, we're going to get a little more personal, I think. I think we're going to talk about some ministry struggles that we've experienced, maybe on a more personal level. Like, I think there's a misconception of what a pastor's role is. We kind of addressed that last week. But just kind of a misconception of who a pastor is as a person. Like, we're just these perfect people that come every Sunday and know the word inside and out. We never.
Rives Church knows.
Oh, I know. Exactly.
I can tell you that right now.
I think there's a misconception on who pastors are and kind of what they deal with, what they struggle with, and so let's just kind of dive in and talk about some of the struggles you experience as a pastor.
So we talked about what we expected, right?
Yeah.
And so, I'd be interested in hearing from you guys, like up to date, like now, normal life. What are some things that you wrestle with daily? I got a list, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Well, I guess I'm trying to formulate my list because it's not any
one
thing. It kind of varies from day to day, right?
I was saying, for me, I think one of the things that's before me is understanding that I'm supposed to lead people as a flawed person myself. Actually, JP, you put a book in my hand a few years ago called Leading with a Limp. If you've not read that, please read that book. It is worth your time. But the whole premise of Leading with a Limp is that you are the chief sinner in the room. Like no one is more broken than you are. And not that we celebrate brokenness, we celebrate our weaknesses. We can rejoice in them. Paul even rejoiced in his weaknesses because that's when Christ was strong. But when you come to the table acknowledging that I need help, I am in progress. We're reading a book right now called Lead, and he's talking about Paul David Tripp. He's talking about some of the very same things. But it's hard because there are times when I am teaching, and I'll be teaching on a Sunday morning or on a Sunday evening, and I'm listening to what I'm saying, and I'm going, grief, I need this more than anybody right now. And so you kind of walk away sometimes feeling like a hypocrite because you're like, shoot, I struggle just as much as anybody, and I'm up here. Why am I leading? Like, what's going on? So
I think just as a resource, you mentioned the book Leading with a Limp. I think it's written by Dan Allender.
Yes, Dan Allender. Yep.
So if you want to look it up on Amazon or your other where you get your books, it's a great book. Great book. How about you, Jeremy?
I think listening to Matt talk a little bit. Managing expectations, I think, can be a big, and it's realizing that everybody has an expectation of you. Sometimes you're not sure what that is
until you fail.
Yes,
and I think too, just that a little bit of that is rooted in maybe a desire. You want everybody to be happy, right? A pastor, we want the sheep to be happy. We want them all. But realizing, I think it was Abraham Lincoln said, you can keep some of the people happy all the time and all the people happy some of the time, but you're never going to keep all the people happy all the time.
Right.
But the expectations don't just come from, the people that you're trying to serve. It also comes from your family, right? Your wife. I got a great wife who is very well suited to the ministry. She understands that, okay, there's something bigger going on here. But she also keeps me honest in that, hey, you got to be home. Pretty good at that. They are pretty good at that. Right?
Where are you?
And she's pretty understanding. Like, I have to be like incommunicado for a long time before she's finally like, hey, are you okay? Are you coming home tonight? Like, what's going on?
Are we still married?
I haven't gotten that one yet. No, she's pretty great like that. But just the expectations, knowing everybody has a little different expectation of what a pastor should be, and sometimes those expectations, they're not fair and they're false.
Yeah.
And how do you work through that? I have to say, overall, Village Hope Church is a great place to minister. I don't want it to sound like we're talking about the other churches, right?
Yeah.
Talking about Rives, no.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, our Rives people they're just very gracious. That doesn't mean they don't keep us honest.
Sure.
Because I would expect that, and I value accountability a lot. But yeah, I understand. The expectations of what they think you should do and what you're actually supposed to do and what you actually do.
Right. You pray all week and work for an hour on Sunday.
Yeah, it must be nice to study the Bible all week long and
Right.
pray together when you get to the church with the guys and sing hymns and take communion. And
Exactly.
I would love for that to happen, but that does not
That'd
happen.
be a good work week.
Right.
We have to work hard at making sure we do things that we should be doing.
Yeah.
And not doing things that we shouldn't be doing. Like the guys will ask me, should I be doing that? And I'll look right at them and go, no.
Yeah.
No, do not do that, because you lose your focus. And I mean, we're given we have to lead the ministry here, right? We have to lead the vision.
Yep.
And so if the leaders aren't staying focused on the vision, that means everyone that they're leading is not going to stay focused on the vision.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to get distracted in ministry, which with expectations that are maybe part of the vision, but not really, and staying focused on what the important things are. That's
Keeping the main thing the main thing.
I think we kind of talked about this last episode, but like everybody has an idea of this could be a good ministry, this could be a good study, this could be a good thing, but then their idea is you should lead it.
Yes. Yes.
And like the Bible clearly says, like an elder and pastor's job is to devote themselves to the teaching and preaching and praying and
Right.
and kind of to the ministry.
study of the word.
The study of the word. And so like when we start adding, you guys joked about all these other clauses that youth ministers title says,
Other
like
duties
other
as
duties
assigned.
as assigned,
Right.
Which is fine. But like we start joking about all these other things, but other pastors get those same duties too, where it's like,
Sure.
okay, you have to lead the women's conference, you have to organize a women's conference, you have to organize a parenting conference, you have to organize,
Right.
and so like you get all these expectations, and you're the pastor, but you're in charge of every single thing that happens in this church, and you got to teach on something.
And that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Yeah, could you
absolutely.
imagine if we had to organize the women's conference we
No,
just
that'd
had?
be- no, that'd be bad.
Yeah, that wouldn't
That'd
work
be bad.
well.
But
Well,
we got
we
Yeah.
just
we got a great lady who she took that and
She did.
ran with it, and it was good.
like a
And-
month ago. Was it a month that we've been doing the Bible study?
Yeah.
So this is one of the guys, Steve, in our church. They've been here about a year,
Probably not quite.
not quite, but
Yeah.
close to a year. He texted me one day. He's like, "Hey, we need a Bible study for the working stiff. Like guys that are working during the day and can't come to the church and have a Bible study. How about something at night?" And so, with that, I proceeded to say, "Are you going to teach it?" Like I didn't.
Right.
I didn't feel compelled.
Right.
Do I think we need men's Bible studies and women's Bible studies? We do. We haven't even have more ideas in Rives Church. We're not going to tell you what those are yet because we're not finished formulating them.
Sure.
Suspense.
But the Bible study we have tonight, like Monday night, I go to the Bible study.
But you're not teaching it.
We're not
No.
teaching.
Yeah.
No, I'm there. Now, I had comments, and sometimes I feel this urge to teach because
Right.
that's just
No,
something
that's
that I
who
do.
you are. Yeah.
Right.
But it's nice to know that we can entrust other people who are equipped to do the ministry,
Yep.
to actually do ministry.
Right.
It's this is not my church. It's not Caleb's church. This is their church. It's God's church that He wants us to do specific things in.
Yeah.
But anyway, Caleb, what are some of your frustrations?
Frustrations within ministry?
Yeah, or things that you kind of wrestle with at times.
I think, I think not so much anymore, but I think expectations was definitely one of them. Like you guys said, like just different things that kind of get added onto your job. I think in youth ministry, there's a heaviness that people aren't aware of. Like, I think there's a lot of, our youth are struggling a lot more than people realize.
Oh, yes, they are.
And so I think there's kind of a burden of, okay, I have to, and we kind of talked about this last episode. Like,
Matt was talking about.
yeah,
it.
like
you kind of take that on yourself.
You kind of take it
right?
on yourself.
Yeah.
I have to mentor and build up this kid by myself.
Yeah.
And so no matter what's going on, and we do, like we're called to do that, but it's
Absolutely.
not a singular thing by yourself.
Right.
And so I think there's a certain burden. and it's within all ministry, but I think youth ministry in particular, like when you see kids hurting and kids feeling pain and kids questioning, I think there's a heaviness with youth ministry. And I think a lot of people think youth pastor's job is just to play dodgeball and watch my kids for a couple hours.
Feed them some pizza while you're at it.
Yeah.
That's true.
And even like our parents are all really good, but even our parents will make a comment like, "Oh, you guys are babysitting tonight," and it's like, no, I'm here to partner with you
to make disciples.
To make disciples.
Yeah.
Right.
My job isn't to feed your kid for a week's worth of food,
Or even to raise your kid.
or to raise your kid. And that kind of comes up too, like with youth ministry. Like, my kid's doing this, fix it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I got to raise my own kids. Like, you know.
Right.
And so I think youth ministry, there's a little bit of a different burden. And I think that's something that kind of I've wrestled with, especially the last few weeks. Like I was just saying before, we've had a heavy few weeks.
Kids,
like
kids got stuff going on.
Yeah. And so I think that's something I've wrestled with. I think family life is a big thing because, I love all the kids in my youth group. And I would love to spend, my whole work week hanging out with kids and mentoring and leaning into kids.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
But, I have a wife and 3 kids of my own at home too.
Yeah. Well, and I'll be honest, that was part of what God used in my own heart to move me from youth ministry into senior pastor ministry. Was I had 6 kids at home. And it was like I said to somebody, I said, I got my own my own youth group at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not that I didn't love the kids at church and want to build into it, but you're right. There's a heaviness. There's a responsibility that's felt there. And it was like I think I just kind of like to be responsible.
And
for
I
my
think
own.
so. I'm over the youth ministry, but I'm also the elder of the kids ministry.
Right.
So I'm over every
You're over,
single kid that's 0 to 18
birth
in our
to 8,
church.
yeah.
And so I think within that, like, there's a heaviness, but there's also kind of a lack of willingness to get involved. And we have some great volunteers. Like, I don't want to discredit our volunteers. I have a great leadership team.
Yep.
But you need more. You always need more.
Yes.
We always need more, and like we're always making announcements. Hey, we need more. We need more. We need more. We need
Well,
more.
ours is especially now because
we're growing.
Yeah, our growth curve is.
But I think there's that other heaviness, like, we paid you to do it, so why would I give up my time? And we were talking,
and that's back to that whole business model creeping into the American church too. Of I'm just going to outsource this, right? I'm gonna I'll pay the youth pastor to raise my kids spiritually, instead of and we send the wrong message sometimes as the church, where we say, don't try this at home, send your kids to us, and we'll take care of raising them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, kind of a thing. When no, it takes a village.
And I think we've talked about this, like, outside of youth ministry, again, back to that book, letters to the church, that we referenced last episode. But like, I think there's the idea in the American church that every age group has to have their own thing. Like, you have to have kids, and don't get me wrong, kids ministry is great because you need to speak to kids on their level. Right. But I think there's something to be said when, like, our 5th and 6th graders are in our service on Sundays.
Yeah.
We don't have our own class, and we probably should have some. But I think there's something to be said about corporate worship together.
And we keep our kids in the worship service until I get up to preach, and we dismiss the kids up through 5th grade.
Yeah.
But my 5th grader, he prefers to stay in the service, and so he stays in the service. And I guess he's in 6th grade now, so they keep growing up on me.
You got 6 of them. You can't keep track.
It's hard. It's hard. But I think there's something about families, right? And when a family comes in the door at your church and you're splitting them up, and you're going here, you're going here, you're going here, you're going the other place.
Yeah.
I think we do a disservice to the family.
And even we've been talking about some new Bible study ideas in our men's Bible study. We have an 11-year-old that's coming.
That's awesome.
And that's
awesome.
the church. Like, that is what the church is supposed to be, because then this 11-year-old sees his dad being vulnerable and, hey, I don't understand this verse. Or I don't, it's not, everything is perfect. It's laid out. The Christian life is perfect and great. Like, the kid experiences Christianity through their parents.
Well, I mean, I think that overall it speaks to the balance of ministry and knowing what you should devote your time, energy, and effort to on a daily basis. Not like the whole idea of ministry, it's got glitz and glamour to it, right? Mm-hmm. So what they don't teach you in seminary.
You want to write a book?
What they don't teach you in seminary.
Things they should have taught me in seminary.
Is Monday through Friday. when you're supposed to be a circus act and juggle everything.
Right.
And to understand, like, one of my things that I'm not good at is I don't answer the phone. I don't answer my cell phone.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I know. We're all totally aware. Everybody's aware.
Yeah.
And I said to him, son, it's not personal. I know I offend everybody by doing that, and sometimes I answer it, sometimes I don't.
I've just come to accept it as part of who you are, JP.
It is part of who I am. It's not. It's nothing personal. It really isn't. But there are times when I was talking to my wife Sue about this last night. There are times when
you better answer her calls.
Listen. Her and my daughter. Okay,
there you go. You got your priorities straight.
Yeah, so it's balancing, because I know every time my phone rings.
Yep.
It could be 5, 10, 20, half hour, 30 minutes. You're not
half a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I want to help, right? And of course, doing counseling and in the past having my own counseling practice, people have called me.
Yep.
And so I know that if I accept another thing, then I have to balance another thing. But I only have so much on my plate, so that means something's going to fall off my plate.
And how do you know? How do you make that decision between? How do you prioritize?
I just decide that I'm going to offend everyone equally and not answer the phone.
And I think
it's not purpose. Like, if you text me, I will respond quicker if you text me.
I've learned that.
I think our leadership team, our elders, have been very, very good at saying no.
Yes, they will tell us we don't want you to do that,
which is incredible. Because, like I said,
they're good.
I came from a little church where it was yes, you do it, you do it, you do it, you do this, you do this,
do everything.
Our elders are like, no,
and like so you come here, and our elders are like, no, you're here to focus on teaching.
This is what we want you.
And so I think we have a very, very gracious leadership team.
We do, but that's only one of the things,
right?
So it all has to do with deciding, okay, why am I here? What are my responsibilities and expectations? I have to do those things. I can't get away from not studying.
Oh no,
I can't.
Yeah,
and I'm just the type of person who wants to have more than I need, just in case, because I don't preach from notes. I just don't.
Really?
Oh no, I have words. I have words that I use.
Okay.
Lines that trigger my study, my thinking when I studied, and so usually that's when I get extemporaneous and I start talking and I start drilling down into a rabbit hole and I realize, oh, I'm down there. Okay, I got to come out of there. But I have to do those things. But there's a lot of things that I don't have to do. But yet, because of who I am and how God wired me, I want to do.
Right.
And I think that comes back to equipping the saints. There's multiple people there's 200 plus people in our church. There's probably 200 plus in your church or close.
More or less, yeah.
So there's 200 people in this building. Why should every single hospital visit fall on a pastor?
It shouldn't.
Who says the pastor is the only person?
And our church is good at that. We have a group of people that actually go visit.
And we've just started a ministry. We call it Village Cares.
Yeah.
Hospital is just one of the many things where these requests come to a central location.
Yep.
And we've got a team of volunteers that are
usually the people in the church find out before me anyway. Yeah. I'm usually the last to find out the information.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, did you know such and such was in the hospital or such and such is at home? I'm like, no.
Yeah, and I just tell these people, I'm like, make sure I know what I need to know. Yep. Like if there's a hospital visit where someone wants the pastor, please let me know.
So we started using a different ministry thing, database and stuff. So people that are on that team, when they make a visit, they go in and type, and all those who are part of it get a notification that they were there, and
that's what we're doing too.
It's super helpful.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I'm thankful for that because then we can stay up to date with who's doing what. They got contacted, and it was something that we needed to do. But yet, when all the expectations are put on you, either internally or externally, balancing and deciding what should I do, what do I want to do,
what does God,
what shouldn't I do,
right?
what
And I
don't I want to
struggle.
do?
I struggle with that. Something comes across my, especially what you say. Something comes across the desk and it's like, "Ooh, I'd really like to do that."
Yep.
That's the way I'm wired.
Yep.
But wait, I don't need to.
No, I'm a yes man
Yeah.
for sure. Like if there's something neat, I'm a servant. Like that's one of my gifts.
Well,
I
and
like
you
to
said
serve.
help. Like I want to help people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Especially if they're struggling spiritually, but even if they've just got another need too.
Yep.
It's like I want them to be able to say, "My church helped me do that."
Yeah.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I, as the pastor, need to do that.
I love like our small group, our community life group program. Like a lot of the life groups do that for each other, and which is good. But it's like as people get more used to, because if we continue to do it,
They're going to get used to that.
we will enable
Yep.
them being equipped
Yep.
to do the work of the ministry
Yeah.
because we're doing it for them.
Right.
But when we say, "Yeah, I can't do that," then all of a sudden it changes. Somebody has to pick up the responsibility,
Right.
and then that's of course elders and deacons and other people that have that ability should be able to.
And I'll say this too, like equipping. I hear that word and I think, oh man, that's like a big deal, right? It's there's got to be curriculum. Sometimes it's as easy as a couple months ago we were talking about starting this program. Hospital visitation was going to be part of it. One of our guys, one of our men in our church, was like, I don't know if I could visit hospitals. I don't know. I'm like he said, can I come with you? I said, yeah, sure, come with me. So he came with me to do a hospital visit. There wasn't a lot of specific do this, don't do that. It was just
Let me show you how to
with
do
me.
it.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
come with me. Let me show you what I do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he went with me, and he was like, "I can do that." Like he realized it wasn't rocket science. Pastor Jeremy can do it. It's not.
Yeah.
that
Easy.
right? And he's a part of our hospital visitation team.
Yeah.
Visiting people. And so I guess I'm saying that as much for my own benefit as equipping doesn't have to be this huge thing.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just coming alongside. Hey, let me show you what I.
Well,
do.
and I think equipping goes alongside with encouraging. I think a lot of times people hear that they can't do things, or they're not good enough, or they're not qualified.
They've never done it before.
Yeah, or they've
Yeah.
never.
Well, we're
done it.
afraid to let people try and fail. That's the thing.
And like
That's a big thing.
even you look at I don't remember the verse, but you look at the disciples and it calls them out. It says they were all uneducated, ordinary
That's a book of
men,
Acts, yeah.
and people were amazed.
and they were amazed
at what God was doing.
And that's something else that, like, we were talking before this episode started about like degrees, and that's something I have wrestled with a long time because I'm a college dropout. And so it took me a lot of reading that verse. Ordinary, uneducated men change the world.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, it doesn't matter. And, like, degrees are important, but it doesn't matter compared to your walk with God.
Degrees can be helpful.
They can be
Helpful.
helpful.
They'll
They're
never
tools.
replace the Holy Spirit.
Exactly.
Right.
And so, like, that was
Right.
something we were talking about struggles. That was another thing that I struggled for a long time. And it actually took, I was preaching one Sunday, and I usually would reference, I'm not a theologian, I'm not a doctor, like, and
Someone told you
I
to
would
stop
kind of
that?
say, like, hey, I'm not this, but this is what this is saying.
Right.
And this lady, I talked about this a couple weeks ago on our podcast. This lady came up to me after church and she said, Caleb, you need to stop doing that.
Yeah.
And she
for
was
her.
like, you're the one up there on stage. None of the people in the audience are. And I was like, oh, okay. Thank you.
And I
so-
mean, we talked about that in the last podcast about churches, right? What do
Yeah.
churches want? Like many, if you go online and look at like ministryjobs.com or church jobs, whatever.
Church staffing.
Yeah, they have requirements. Like
Right.
there's
Yeah.
a job, and occasionally I read those, and I'm like, Jesus
Doesn't
would
mean
not
this. Yeah.
qualify for this.
Yes.
Right.
That's
I'm
true.
like,
Yeah.
you're wanting a 25-year-old to have a doctorate of ministry and 40 years experience, and you're versed in, and I'm thinking this person does not exist.
I remember 6-7 years ago. It was probably right around the time you got married, actually. And the church your wife was going to at the time was looking for a pastor,
Yeah.
but it was a youth pastor. But it was a youth pastor, a family pastor, a kids pastor, a
Three
family
French
counselor.
hens, two turtle
It was
doves.
this
pastor.
huge
Everything, right.
job description,
Yep.
and I remember looking at that, going, "Who are they going to hire?"
Right. There's
Like,
no one
Do
alive
these
that
three people
meets-
know each other?
Yeah, like.
Yeah.
but I think that's a big one of them. That's a big thing.
Well, and I mean, when you're talking about qualifications for ministry, it's more about heart. It's more about in character
Yeah.
than it is about.
And so why
the
would you hire
letters.
somebody that you don't know?
Ooh.
because that's the way.
You don't know the
I
character.
know.
Well, I'm going to call
I
up
know.
the references. What does that do?
It's really, because you get
I've been in
into-
churches where we call the references, but
Right.
this didn't work out.
Right. Right.
You
Yeah.
know.
Or you call the references and you realize that they're the only three people that have nice things to say about the person.
Right? It paid him real well to speak about it, too.
So we were talking about qualifications for ministry, and like you think about all the people God used in the Bible. We kind of referenced this last podcast, but think of like even Moses.
Yeah.
Moses, he leads the Israelites out of Egypt. Like
He didn't want to do that.
he didn't
made up
want to.
all kinds of excuses.
Oh, I
as to why
can't.
he couldn't
I
do
can't
it.
speak. I got a stuttering problem.
Right.
I can't. Like no.
I don't
and,
talk good.
and so like we think of qualifications, and God. What's that saying? God doesn't use the qualified. He qualifies the called. He doesn't call the qualified.
He
Yeah.
qualifies
Yeah.
the called.
Say that 6 times fast.
Yeah.
I can't even say it. But yeah, like, and I think there's this idea that in order to do any kind of ministry, you have to have 6 degrees, you have to be a doctor, then you got to go to seminary, and then you got to be a monk and read the Bible word to word.
Right.
Cover to cover,
to do that?
6 times a day. Like, yeah. And it's like, I go back to that verse that we just talked about. He used ordinary, uneducated
Right.
men.
So one of the things that I've always struggled with in ministry, and being in ministry, is that not all of my life was filled with wise choices. Mm-hmm. Right, and I made some pretty stupid choices, actually, bad decisions. And when we, Sue and I got married, and then we went into ministry, and over the years, I had always said, the last thing that I want to do is be a senior pastor, a lead pastor. The last thing I want to do. And it's not that I don't have the desire to teach. I love to teach. And I believe I have that gift. But I'm always reminded, and I think the reason I've said that is because there are times, like when I'm thinking through a certain thing or want to teach a certain thing or counseling or studying, the thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. And this has to do with, part of the counseling and the science of the brain kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Why do those intrusive thoughts come back and, you should be the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Who would be a pastor? Why would anybody choose you?
That's the enemy.
Look, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who is it? Who are you? Who do you think you are? You remember these things in your life,
Right.
And so being able to, it's a challenge in ministry, because not only are we under everybody else's microscope, but we also have our own microscope that we're under.
Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges in leadership, I think, in a church. Mm-hmm. It's not that we want to necessarily not fulfill the expectations of people. And so we try to do that, but yet we still battle the ideas and the intrusive thoughts that I believe the enemy tries to use.
Yeah.
To get us distracted. That happens to me. I'm sure it happens to you guys too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Who are you to be up there talking on Sunday?
Right.
And
well, and
so
for me, it's
that can
kind of the opposite, because I was, the good church kid that grew up and, that kind
Oh, you were that person.
Not that I didn't do anything wrong.
Okay.
Me too.
But
Really?
I was a PK, yeah. Middle child PK, so I was the
oh,
peacemaker.
wow.
I mean, my parents were missionaries, but that didn't stop me from wreaking havoc.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
But I have the opposite thing. It's like, here's somebody who's totally broken and they've made all these poor decisions. What do I have to offer them? Right? You can at least put your arm around and say, "Hey, been
I
there,
get it.
done that.
I
This
get
is
it.
how
Yeah.
God worked in my life."
Yeah.
We had one of our elders one time said to another one of our elders who had he said, "I don't have a cool testimony like you."
Oh gosh.
And the other guy was like, "Brother, if I could change
I could have
I
switch
would.
my
I
testimony,
would
for yours,
trade
I'd
mine
do
in
it
a
in a
heartbeat.
heartbeat."
I would too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so the enemy's smart, right? He's not stupid. He knows all of the little insecurities.
I have
that we
other
in
I have
our
other words
background.
for him, but would not be appropriate for this family
We'd have
podcast.
to find that censor button
Yeah,
real
we
quick.
better get your finger on that
We're
button.
gonna leave it. We'll leave it at smart.
Yeah.
for right now.
But he knows how to push our buttons. Right?
Yeah.
He knows
Yeah.
how to prey on our insecurities.
He does.
And he does that every day of the week.
And the thing of it is for us to remember that, he uses mostly the thoughts. We're in the battle for the mind, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We don't battle against
Yep.
flesh and blood, but against
Yep.
principalities and power.
Right.
Absolutely.
And the reality for the believer, for us as guys who are in ministry, who are leading other people, to remember that even that war's been won.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have to keep a constant reminder that yes, Satan and the devil and even our own choices are going to make us doubt sometimes. But we have to go back on the fact that, when Jesus died on the cross, he accomplished a whole lot more than's on the surface.
Right.
And part of that is the end result that we don't have to live defeated. We don't have to live lives that are self-introspective, that get us down and discouraged. But it's easy, right?
Yeah.
Because of the world we live in. But anyway, that's one of the things. But we were talking in the last podcast, and I wanted to mention this because I didn't say what, like you guys mentioned, what things you struggle with, right? Mine's a little bit weird. I guess.
We just assumed you didn't struggle with anything.
No. Yeah, I wish that was the case.
You're like the experienced guy around this table. I just figured
that may be
Had it
true,
all figured out.
but that doesn't mean I still don't have things. So here's my thing, and let me give the caveat to here, Rives Church, if you're listening, I'm really okay. I am okay. I'm cool. But just like the inside, like there's not many times you get to hear the heart of four pastors, and hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
And so here's mine, and it's a big thing. God created me a little bit different in that I don't get energy from being around people.
I don't think that's different.
Oh, well, it might be because I would rather be by myself.
That might be different
in
than
my basement reading a theology book, drinking a cup of coffee.
I know,
And
I know a lot of pastors like that. I know a lot of people like that. I think
I'm that way.
You may be different from the stereotypical.
But it gets worse. You ready?
But wait, there's more. Okay.
There's more.
All right. Okay.
So here's the more. I don't get energy from being around people, but there are times when I walk into a room where I feel like I'm the loneliest person there.
Yeah.
I've experienced.
You know
that
what I'm talking
before.
about?
I know exactly.
Like you're in a room with 250 people, and you're like, "What? Am I the only person in this room?" Like, I don't know where that feeling necessarily comes from. I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
I just know that I've experienced that.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big thing with me. And I'm on the other side of the coin. I'm like, well, I like serving people. I like helping people. That is a gift that I have. I mean, too much to a fault sometimes. But I don't get energy from being around people.
That's okay.
Like the fluffy, I'm not I mean, I can be, and I have to work at it.
Right. And you can be that person when necessary, right?
Yes.
But that's not who you.
That's just not how I'm wired.
Yeah, and that's fine. I don't know that I'm necessarily wired that way either. Like how do you recharge your battery? Some people get charged up by being around other people. Like
that is so foreign to me.
Oh, I do. I'm extroverted 100%.
My wife is kind of like that. I mean, she goes back and forth, but our former pastor, Pastor Dyke, he was like, that was him.
It was like his crack.
He loved people.
Yes.
People loved him.
he used to say that people are my crack.
Yeah. And he loved. And I would look at him like, I don't know.
He still loves people. I mean,
He does.
That is who God created. Dyke.
And it's like I just don't get that because I'm not wired that way. I don't think that way.
Right.
That doesn't mean I don't like helping people and love people and want to encourage people and will do anything for them. Of course I will.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been out 2 a.m. in the morning. You understand?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm struggling. My wife and I are fighting. Meet me in the Myers parking lot. Okay. Sure. I'll be there. Have some coffee.
Yeah.
But I don't get energy.
Right.
I don't get recharged from being with people.
I worked with a pastor that said we're all like Legos. In that, some of us are like those 1 or 2 bump ones where we have a small capacity for those deep, meaningful interactions. Others are the 6 or the 8, and then he's like, and then there's those people. They're like a base plate, and we all and we all know the base plate people.
Yeah.
Like, and those of us that are the 1, 2, 3 bump people, we don't understand those base plate people, other than to say, well, that's the way God created
love you.
them. Bless them.
I'm glad you're that way because I'm not.
Right.
And that could be a struggle because then you feel alone doing ministry when you're really not alone.
Right.
We have a great group of guys
Sure.
on our elder board.
And
we had a great group of leadership.
That's where team is important in ministry.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's really not them that are making us feel that way. I think it's the weight of ministry.
It comes with the title. I think you have this title, pastor, in front of your name. So again, and we kind of talked about this earlier. Everyone has a you're holier than thou type mentality. Or we were just talking, you were the good kid. Yeah. And I struggled with that so much coming into ministry because it was like, and there are certain people in my life where I'm like, stop doing that. Stop building me up. I have my own struggles. They may not look like yours.
I prefer that people don't call me pastor or doctor. I just don't like that. It sounds
You
icky.
told me I had to call you doctor.
That's because
You got it.
only if I'm ticked at you.
I'm just kidding.
Dr. Mar will see you.
Yeah, I just think with the title, there's this just bubble of you're better than me. And
Yeah, I don't like
we're
that.
all sitting here, the four of us around the table, we're not better than you. And we say it.
No.
Every
Yeah,
time
for
I preach, I say it. Every time you preach, you say it. But I think there's just, he's pastor. And that it goes with that mentality of, like I said, they're educated, they have this degree, they have this doctorate, which isn't true.
Don't put me up on that.
Yeah.
and still have the same limp.
Yeah,
Right.
leading with
Right.
a limp. Yeah.
Well, and I was gonna say with that feeling of lonely, like I don't know, maybe you guys can all speak to this more than any of us. I can at least, but that feeling of being alone, like my wife has expressed that to me at different times, where sometimes you just kind of feel isolated, where it's like. It's the pastor and his wife, and it's almost there's almost a pedestal type thing where it's like they're in unapproachable light, which not true. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's one of the struggles I have sometimes is, pastors need pastoring too, and our wives need pastoring too, and we all try to lead our wives well, but we don't have all the answers either.
And we have some elders at Village Hope that I feel like are very good at pastoring their pastor.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a couple.
right?
We have a couple guys that are more than others, which is I think it's a gift and gifting.
It's a gifting thing. It's a personality thing. But yeah, we've got guys that, they don't hesitate. Pastor, how you doing?
Yeah.
You okay?
Absolutely.
I think
Well,
it's
I have them
interesting.
telling me you need to take a day off.
Yeah,
You
go
need to
home.
not be here. And what are you doing?
Yeah.
And they tell us all.
I think it's interesting going back to what you were just saying, Matt. Like, pastor is the only title where your wife gets absorbed in your title too. You can work any other job and your wife, like, it doesn't matter. But pastor, all of a sudden, you have this title and it's like your wife has to be a pastor's wife. What does that even mean? Like,
Right.
And so, like,
I tell you, when I was interviewing at Village Hope 9+ years ago now, my wife got that question. Like, what are you bringing to the table? Like, can you play the piano? You bring in, and she said, here's the deal.
Are you paying her?
Exactly. And my wife said, here's the deal. You're paying him. You're not paying me. And she said, I'm going to make sure that his home runs smoothly,
Yeah.
and that,
Which is huge.
so that he can be your pastor. She said, I'll use my spiritual gifts. I'll find where I fit. And I'll get involved.
Yep.
And afterwards, the chairman of that search committee, who's also the chairman of our board, he was like, that was a great answer.
Yeah.
And that's how I knew we had probably found our spot, because the chairman of the elder board was like, that's exactly what I don't remember who the question came from, but he didn't feel like it was a fair question.
Yeah.
He didn't want that expectation to be there.
when I interviewed here, I got a question like that about what Heather would do, what her role in ministry was, and I said because she wasn't even there, and so I said something along those lines, like, she wants to plug in, she wants to be involved. This isn't her job.
Right.
She's got a full-time job.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think it's just weird that you get grouped together as a unit,
very weird.
as a pastor instead of any other job title.
So speaking of titles, this Sunday, what we do on Sundays here at Rives Church is every week at 10:10. If you're serving, you have to be here at 10:10. We all pray together. All the volunteers come, and so we all pray together. And so my wife was sitting in the coffee shop, which is in another room from where we pray, and I went into her. I was like, "Do you not pray anymore?" And she just looked at me. She's like, "What?" So she comes out, and I said to her, I was like, we were praying, and I leaned over to her while we were praying. I said, as the pastor's wife, I know she hates this.
Taking your life in your own hands.
As the pastor's wife, you really should be dedicated to prayer. She looked at me. Her friend was standing next to her. Kim was standing next to her. She looked at me. She goes, "Shut up." I'm like, yeah. She hates that. Yeah. And we get that all the time, which is really weird. Like, and I get the respect thing. You're honoring the position, and I appreciate that. I really do. And we all do, right? We all appreciate the respect and the honor that we're given, and that should be there. But to think with that honor and respect that we're somehow different or better is a very bad assumption.
We're just as broken as the next person.
And so, you know, of course, Sue and I joke about it. You know, I was like, you know, the pastor's wife, when she's getting dressed sometimes at church, I'm like, I don't know if the pastor's wife is like, oh man, it gets her fired up so quick. I do it just to mess with her, you know.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I think it's interesting. We were all just talking kind of struggles and pastoral struggles, and I just found a verse in Acts where he's talking to leaders of the church, and he says, pay careful attention to yourself and to the flock in which the Holy Spirit has made you oversee to care for the church of God, which he obtained with his own blood. And so just that one verse as encouragement to pastors, pay attention to yourself, pay attention to your flock, but then he ends it, it's not your church.
You know, one thing I think to go with that I think is important, like paying attention to yourself. I have one guy in particular that I spend time with every week. And the characteristic of this one guy is very unique. And it's this: he never wants anything from me. We don't talk about church. He doesn't ask me how church is going. And he goes here. He's a main ministry leader here at this church.
He just wants to be your friend.
He just wants to be my friend.
That's refreshing.
He just wants to. We hang out or we play golf. We've been playing golf a lot inside, and so it's just about spending time together.
Yep.
And it's honestly, it's a relief.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I got one guy. Yeah. I mean, not that there aren't other guys. There's other guys I could do that with, but you know, sometimes, and that brings us back to the natural, right? We're just human. We're just, you know, we're trying to figure out our walks just like everybody else is.
Yep.
And sometimes you just need to be treated as a normal human with no expectations.
Right.
Yeah.
And to know that I can hang out with this guy, he doesn't want anything from me. Zero. Other than my company.
Yeah.
Him and I get along real well, you know. And he helps me. He probably doesn't know. He'll probably listen to this and be like, "Oh, really?" But and that's, you know, for me that recharges. Like I can, that's a recharge there, right? And I'm refreshed.
Yep.
I do, you know, during that whole time, if I'm not playing good golf, then there's other struggles that I have, you know, with not hitting the ball straight. But having guys, people around us. That understand that we need to have relationships that don't necessarily include ministry expectation is huge. Yeah. To me, it's huge. It's big. And that's, I will say, and I'm not saying this to the detriment of Rives Church or Village Hope, but many times when people are contacting you, or me, they want something. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they shouldn't do that.
No. I understand what you're saying.
But one of the struggles is if you don't have people around you that don't want anything from you and just want to build a relationship with you, then it gets imbalanced, and it's something we have to be conscious of.
Well, and we're in that unique hybrid situation too, where ministry is also our job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And you talk about playing golf. A lot of guys, when they go to the golf course, they do that to forget about work.
Yep.
They don't want to talk about work. They don't want to worry about work. They just want to have fun with their buddies and you know, chase their ball into the woods or something like that.
Ooh.
If you play like me.
That just it puts that in my mind like, that
was a trigger right there.
Yeah, that was a trigger.
Yeah. Sorry.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
No.
But
anyway,
but they want to worry about other stuff. They don't want to worry about work.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and ministry is supposed to be, you know, it's supposed to be primary in any follower of Jesus Christ's lives, but it's also work for us, and we need to be able to.
When it's vocational, it's different.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
So speaking of that, like, how do we encourage people to do ministry non-vocationally? Because I think there's another misconception that the only way to do ministry is if you're paid to do ministry.
Yeah.
And that may come from 1 Corinthians. But
I think it all begins. My opinion is this: it all teaching people to engage in ministry and not being vocational like they have other jobs. Mm-hmm. The first thing they have to do is they have to get their nose in the book. Mm-hmm. No doubt about it. You have to study God's word. Don't take it from me.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it?
It does for me all the time.
No,
like,
I think you're right.
Don't listen to what I'm saying to you. I'm telling you what I think God's word is saying. Mm-hmm. You need to hear it from God.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the thing of it is, you have to understand that if you, like for our church, if you're a part of Rives Church, there's an expectation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're going to be doing some ministry somewhere along the line. Sitting on the bench is not okay. I've said it 1,000 times.
We tell people the same thing.
You know, you have to engage in ministry. Now, we understand life. We understand jobs, kids, wives, family. We get all that, right?
Find somewhere to plug
But you have to find somewhere to plug in.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it's not real hard to figure out that as a believer, how God values the church, the body of Christ, the bride of Christ. Like this, there's a pretty high value put on that. And so to know that, okay, I'm part of the body, I'm part of making this function. It's not the vocational pastor's job.
Right.
It's my job as well. I've been given gifts and abilities. But here's the drawback. Many churches are laid out and they're structured in a way that doesn't provide people the opportunity to exercise their spiritual gifts so they can be equipped so that they can actually do ministry. Mm-hmm. It's more of this hierarchy of,
I'm going to teach, you're going to
listen.
listen.
And so if we need somebody, we'll just hire them.
Right. Sure.
You know, now there's certain instances where we'll have to do that. Like we didn't just get anybody to do these filming of the podcast. Like,
Right.
you know, some guy walks in, I think I could do that. No, we're not. No, we're not going to let you do that.
Yeah.
So there's certain things that we have to invest in.
Right.
But generally speaking, not vocationally, you know, as a job, like this responsibility doesn't start at church.
No.
This responsibility starts in your home because the home, the husband and the wife and the family is a picture of the church.
Right.
And that of Jesus Christ. Like, so we have to, instead of separating that, well, that's their job. We pay them. Well, actually, no, it's not.
Yeah.
I understand why we do that, and we have to do that. You know, and the Bible talks about that vocational stuff. But in the ultimate end, and from the beginning, it's every believer's responsibility to engage in ministry of some sort in the body.
Yep.
So,
And even the early church wasn't a building.
it was not. It was people.
Like we love that you come together and you come to our building, your building, any building. We love that you come to worship collectively. But the church is everywhere.
Right.
The church is for us. It's Jackson County.
Yeah.
For somebody else, it may be Lansing or Detroit or wherever. But the church is wherever you're at.
One of the questions that we've raised a few different times sitting in some of our meetings is if we didn't have our building, how would we still go about accomplishing the mission and vision of Village Hope Church? And it's, understanding ministry is not location. It's not driven by location. Like it's a heart issue. God's placed you where he has placed you to advance the gospel through you. And ministry starts in the home and then it starts with your neighbor.
Yeah.
And, that's we take ministry and we blow it up into something that it's not, when really it's love God and love the person next to you and point them towards Jesus.
And we think of church too often as Caleb said, a building, a place we go.
Yeah.
We go to church. Well, no, we're called to be the church.
Yes.
Not go to church.
Yep.
Wherever 2 or 3 or more are gathered, there's the church.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost that in our American culture for sure.
A lot of things have gotten in the way.
Yeah. A lot of things.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think just encouragement for people not doing ministry, not vocationally, is 1 Peter 4:10 is one of my favorite verses in the whole Bible. It says, each of you has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. Whoever speaks is one who speaks of God. Whoever serves is one who serves by the strength that God supplies, in order that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. You want to do ministry, do it by the strength of God.
Right.
If you're speaking, if you're a vocational teacher, do it by the strength of God. If you're serving in any other region, do it by the strength of God. And I wrote in my Bible right there, feed my sheep.
Well, like ministry for the believer is not an option that you like. If you read God's word, it's not something. Well, I'm not called to that. That's not an option.
Yeah.
It's not whether you're called to it. It's a matter of how you're called to it, and what part do you play in the functioning of the body of Christ to win other people to Jesus and for people to be matured as a believer.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like I'm a Christian, so I think I'm gonna not check that deluxe option on my Christianity. I'm gonna. I don't want to do that. I want to
ride someone's coattails.
Yeah, I want to take it as I can, and
I'm gonna skate into heaven by the skin of my teeth.
Fire insurance type of
good
thing.
enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
But no, that's just.
And I think just to wrap this all up, I think we're running out of time. But to wrap it all up,
I'm getting hungry.
I am too. Yeah. So to wrap up 2 weeks worth of episodes, and I'm actually preaching on this. This will be preached on before you listen to this, but
yes,
ministry isn't something you have to do. Ministry is something you get to do.
Yes.
And so just the idea that we're all called to ministry, like JP just said. We're all called to some form of ministry, vocationally, non-vocationally.
We get to participate.
We get to
in the plan of
like
God.
that verse in 1 Peter 4:11, for Jesus Christ's glory.
Right.
For him be the glory forever and ever.
Yes.
So I think that's all we had, all the time we have. Thank you so much to Jeremy and Matt for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Village Hope.
Now we have to feed them.
Yeah, now we got to go feed them. But thanks, Village Hope, for listening, checking us out.
Yeah.
I think that's about all we got. So just
Last thing, don't forget.
Keep your nose in the book.